We want to welcome you all to our webinar workshop this Thursday afternoon. We appreciate you spending just a small part of your day with us. My name is Brian Griffin, a marketing assistant here at Messer Financial Group. Many of you are already familiar with Messer Financial, but in case you don't know, we are an FMO located in Mint Hill, North Carolina. We started with just 2 agents, now serving 20,000 plus agents across 40 states and still growing. Now, we are providing tools for you to be successful in any business, not just insurance. And today, I'm super excited to introduce some of you to the Google world. Now, our very own Mike Brazel is here to introduce our presenter for the day. So sit back and be ready to learn. Mike, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thanks, Brian. Just excited to be here like Brian. This is one of my favorite people to hear talk. I've probably seen his presentation. I can't tell you how many times. Known him for a couple of years. Joe Dancer's formerly what was called a Google ambassador, which was a level that you could achieve in being a Google guide, and there were very, very few in the United States. He's considered one of Google's top photographers. In fact, and I could be wrong, and he can correct me on this, but he just finished doing the 3D shoot for the Google New York location. He just spoke at the Google London event about photography. He has some really, really big customers that I swear if I told you, you know, Brian heard him this morning. And in fact, he's worked specifically with a few large customers, you know, in the Medicare business. So there's just really nobody else that I would rather have show you and expose you to Google than Joe Dancer. Joe, take away, buddy.
Hey, thanks, Mike. I really appreciate it. Thanks for the intro there. I know Mike said a lot of the words of photos, but throughout my career in doing photography with Google, I very quickly caught on to a lot of the different programs they had. And anytime that I would help a business with my photography services, being mainly virtual tours, I found that not only my service helped them, but simply making sure that they had what we call today a Google business listing, or a Google My Business listing specifically, really helped them out. And in some cases, I had to even concede that maybe it even helped them out a little bit more than my photography. But the good news is that to receive the virtual tour or the photos that I took for them and add them to Google so that they would show up when their business was searched, they had to have a Google My Business account set up. Around 7 years ago, when I started doing the virtual tours for Google when the program first started, to be able to add those, I had to create a Google listing. And in doing so, learned very quickly that they really, really helped. Throughout that time, over the last 7 years, that program went from simply being on Google Plus and something that really wasn't even talked about in the industry. Only people that kind of saw the value of building out a Google Plus page to create their Google listing gained an advantage from it. In the past 4.5, 5 years, Google created an entire program for it, which is today called Google My Business. You should all be seeing my screen. Currently, I'm on that page, which is google.com/business. And that's the program we're going to talk about a little bit today, hopefully to kind of open your eyes to how easy it is and then really how powerful it is. When I first started doing the virtual tours, the only way I could upload them was to put them on that page. And I'm one of those people that I really do like to try to add as much value as possible with my product. So I decided that I wasn't just going to help someone create a Google page and then slap my pictures on them and be done. I was going to make sure that if someone was seeing those images, that their page was the best it could be. And that's led to this presentation today. About 5 years ago, Google actually asked me to become what's called a Google City Ambassador, which was to give formal presentations, not like this, in front of a lot of people instead of online. This is a little foreign to me, but hopefully it goes very well. But basically, I would go to chambers of commerce, marketing groups. I've actually spoken in front of a few large insurance groups. I've done quite a few presentations at all kinds of different large marketing groups that help specific industries. I say some of my favorite ones was I've spoken at the Eye Care Association of America in Chicago, doing the same presentation for them. Some of the more unique ones were, I think my favorite one recently was I talked at the American Bowlers Association, which we helped them make sure that their bowling alleys were being found online. And that was quite an interesting group as well. Like I said, I'm used to seeing a whole group of faces and people in the audience and being able to talk that way. And I'm usually able to gauge responses like confusion or questions. In this case, it will be a little difficult, but we are going to leave plenty of time at the end to answer some questions. But to get started, today we're going to talk more of the basics of what the program is. But before we even do that, we should probably talk about why you would even want to do it and why it's important, and maybe even shed some light on the fact that you've probably already seen it many times before. Once again, the website, which we'll go through here in a moment, is google.com/business, which has tons of information on how to get started and then the benefits of the program. But before that, let's just talk a little bit about Google. I mean, it's pretty simple or pretty easy to say. I mean, I have all the numbers to back it up, but I kind of get tired of talking about all the numbers and going through PowerPoints. But basically, the numbers show that most of the time it's about between 89 and 92% of people start a search for a business or a service that they're looking for on Google, whether that's on their phone or on a desktop computer. And the mobile devices have, of course, drastically increased over the years. When I first started giving these presentations, it wasn't even 50% yet. But today, well over 50% of people that are looking for a business or service near them start right on their mobile device by typing in words onto Google. I'm pretty sure we're all pretty familiar with that. So to kind of jump in and show it from a desktop perspective, I'd just like to do a couple searches and then kind of break those down for you. I mean, really kind of lift the curtain back and show you what's happening when you type in specific words to Google. And to make this as relevant as possible, again, we're going to use things that probably are more specific to your industry. So for instance, in this first search, I've just simply typed in insurance agent. And once again, I'm not doing any PowerPoints or anything. This is just what happens when I type those words on my PC. And by the way, I'm sitting in Cincinnati, Ohio. So some of those searches will be, of course, very local to Cincinnati. But just to break this down very quickly, if I type in insurance agent, I get a general search. The first thing you're going to see in most searches on Google are ads. A lot of us probably know, but just to say it out loud, Google is still currently the #1 advertising company in the entire world. If you add up all of the money spent putting ads on Google, it currently, that total for just Google is about the total of all the other advertising in the world. Added together equals about the same as what Google does. It's how Google funds all the amazing free things that you probably take advantage of, like their email services, calendar, and 90 to 100 other apps that they provide for free. But in doing so, it's kind of funny that their ads are about as simple as it possibly gets. They're simple text ads that show up at the top of a search. And the way they do that is you can purchase specific words, and those words that you purchase based on a lot of variables, and it gets very complicated very quickly, decide which ads show up first and how many show up. And when you see 3 or more, that means those words are probably really expensive because it's based on a supply and demand system, and therefore they're trying to get everybody's ads in. So if you see 3, that means they have to put a lot up every single time that someone uses those words. If you see an ad and there's only 1, that usually means that word probably doesn't cost quite as much. For a very long time, and it may still be the case, the word insurance was the #1 most expensive ad to purchase on Google. So I don't know if I'd recommend jumping out with that word first off if you do decide to look into any of the Google Ads products. I personally do not sell them, but I do see them to be very effective. So the first thing we see is 3 different ads from Google. On the right-hand side, we see what's called a knowledge card. The knowledge card is basically Google saying, you typed in this word, I know what that word means, here's some information about that word. And these are auto-generated based on a whole lot of different information that Google has searched and parsed, and in many cases kind of deemed that it should be generally correct. And what that means is that there's a Wikipedia article on it. They have access to different websites that talk about how much someone should be getting paid. Hopefully you guys are all above this. Things like that. And then as we scroll down, we'll notice the first thing we see next is, in most cases, what we call a 3-pack. It's the Google local search results. In this case, we see a 4-pack because one of them is an ad. And in this case, the ad goes to the top and it looks very, very, very similar to the rest of the Google listings that are applied here. The program we're talking about today, once again, is Google My Business. And what Google My Business does is creates this. If you have a free Google My Business listing that you've created, you have a chance to show up in this list. And what's very interesting about this is it's well above the very first actual website listing. And what that means, I mean, I'd say probably even as little as 2 or 3 years ago, if you asked me what one of the most important things you could do online would be to help people find you more, every single person out there selling websites and SEO services would tell you, well, you'd be really nice if you were the first link that showed up on Google, the top of Google search. And honestly, I don't know if I can tell you that that is as important today as it used to be. Because if we talk about maybe more the older days of the way people talked about marketing, we used to talk about things like above the fold, which would mean like a newspaper. You always wanted to make sure your headline or your ad was above the fold because more people saw that. And if we kind of put that into terms with Google today, even if you are the #1 searched most important website for that search I just typed in, you're well below the fold. It's quite a far search or scroll down on the page to get there. And on a phone, it's even further down the page. So we've seen that many businesses and many services that exist have found that it can be just as important, if not more important, to make sure that you do have what we call as a Google business listing, and that it's being found correctly and that it has the information needed. So when people type in a search term, that you have an opportunity to be in that search. The other really nice thing about the Google business listings is they really level the playing field. It doesn't matter so much that you've spent $1 million on your website and hundreds of thousands of dollars per month on your search optimization so that your website's found for every single word and you're putting lots and lots of new information on the internet every day. When it comes to a Google business listing, it's really getting down to the point of what Google considers to be relevance. And if someone's searching for something that you sell or that you do or that you offer, the Google business listing can give that information in a way that brings it to be more local. So if you're looking for the best restaurant near you, well, just because there's some restaurant in New York that may be considered the best restaurant in the world, if I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio, it does really nothing for me to know about it. I'm looking for the best restaurant near me that I want to go to and that I want to eat at. Or even more specifically, if I'm in the mood, let's say, for Mexican food. If I type in Mexican restaurant, it'll give me Mexican restaurants that are near me. It'll put them in this list, and I can very quickly see reviews. I can look at pictures of their food, and I can make a purchasing decision right here in search. And with this information, I can even click and get directions and drive there and eat there, or call them from their phone number. So these listings have become, in many cases, used more than websites today. A couple other searches we have here are things like insurance agent Medicare. When we kind of break down this search, we notice we didn't get the knowledge graph on the right-hand side. We still have ads because the word Medicare probably is a lot cheaper than just insurance, since it's a little bit more specific. So there's only 2 ads this time. We do get a knowledge card, not a graph on the right, but this one kind of breaks down and it's more from a website specific. With good SEO and website integration, sometimes you can capture cards for specific questions and things like that. It even breaks down into questions that people have asked before. And in this case, it even starts to show websites and then eventually gets to local businesses. And a lot of times, based on the type of search that you're doing, it'll place the knowledge cards above or below even the search results. And it's just a lot of times based on how Google thinks you're trying to look for something. The big difference with this on the desktop that really doesn't show as well as the mobile device, and I'll show some screenshots there as well, is that when searches are performed on the mobile device, these cards usually move up quite a bit higher on the list because it knows more about where you are and what you're looking for. Another search here is Medicare agent near me. This really emulates more what the phone does. The phone, when you type in a search in Google, kind of generally adds in the near me if it feels like what you're searching for is a business or service or product, because a lot of times that's what you truly are looking for, something near you. Once again, the desktop treats it slightly differently, but if you're ever wondering maybe what the phone search may provide, you can type in the words near me after any search and see the knowledge graph kind of move higher up the list. Once again, one of the neat things we're seeing here is that, yes, there's some ads being purchased, but in a lot of cases, the actual agents and people that are here who have created Google listings are showing up. I mean, if I scroll down and look through some of these other searches where we get into the place where you're probably seeing people spend a lot of money to make sure they have a huge website and for Google to think that their website is relevant enough for you to want to read things about it, they're not these. These are the local agents near me that may be able to help me with something like Medicare. So to jump back a little bit here, actually, let's jump forward a little bit. Let me show you the same things on a phone. So on a phone, the same thing, Medicare agent near me. On this case, the first thing that comes up is just the Google listings. You don't even have anything else on the screen. There's not even ads or anything there. It's just jumping straight to the people that Google thinks can help you the quickest. From there, in this case, I think for this screenshot, I just made these screenshots about 15 minutes before the meeting started because it could be different tomorrow. And I don't like to do PowerPoints just simply because it will change on me before I even get the thing done. So I like to do real world results that are today. And so you can see exactly how Google search looks today. From here, I think I clicked on this very first one since it had a great amount of stars. I know it's an ad, but honestly, it looks better than the other two. It has information that tells me, okay, there's 23 people that really like this company. Maybe I'd like them too. So when I click on them, it instantly shows images. This is their cover image. It has information that I can instantly call them. I can even message them. I can get directions to their office, visit their website. And there's also these tabs for updates, and I can read their reviews and see more photos. The next image, I just scrolled through a couple of the images to show that there's a full gallery that they've added here of imagery that, if they've done it correctly, it should be pleasing imagery that would, of course, make me want to visit them. The next thing here is you can click updates. A lot of us probably have either a website or a lot of social media things we do. And in that case, a lot of times we produce, they call them like blog posts or informational posts that you can place onto social media in Facebook or Twitter or different areas where your clients may be. In this case, someone's looking for you. So the ability to add a blog post and videos and all kinds of other great information may even be more relevant here because they're actively looking for that service. So this may be that time that they are actually willing to read an article about Medicare. I mean, I was kind of joking with Mike before this. I'm like, yeah, I don't think I've ever been scrolling through my Facebook and just instantly saw like insurance information and thought, I think I'll read that article right now. I was probably in there looking at events or things my friends are doing or family. And not to say that it's not a good idea to have that information there just to keep it top of mind. But if you do have that information and you're putting it out there, adding it to your Google listing is simple and free. And it's as simple as adding what they call a post on Google. And what's really nice about it is it's really highly relevant because the only time it shows up is when they find you based on a search like Medicare agent near me. This particular one, they added a video. And if I scroll down, which I can't here on my computer, but this is a screenshot, but what's really neat is all of your posts are in a nice order. So you can basically have a blog or those articles that you've spent time to create and put into Facebook and other social media places you can have them documented and in a nice, neat order on the front page of Google to where people can scroll right through them and read all of that information. People can also sit down and read through your reviews. And once you've created a Google listing, you can also answer your reviews. People love to see that not only when someone took the time to sit down and write a review, that you can actually, from your Google listing, click and answer those reviews and add more information to the conversation. This was a second search where I just typed in a simple, I even took out the word agents just to say Medicare near me, just to really kind of see if it would trigger Google to find businesses. And it must see Medicare as more of a service because it did. It showed me once again. And it's a different group of people this time because the words were slightly different. In this case, there was this one, but then this other one looked pretty nice as well. Since they had reviews, I clicked on them. And if you think about how you use your mobile device or search when you're doing it, kind of ask yourself, have I done this exact thing when looking for a restaurant or somewhere to get my hair cut or to find a plumber? I mean, people use it for so many different reasons. And we're starting to realize, probably a lot of us, that many times we might not even go to a website. We may just see these listings, click on a few of them. A lot of times, if we look at the data from Google, it says people click, they look at between 3 and 5 listings. They mainly look at pictures and reviews, and then back at pictures on another one and reviews, and pictures on another one and reviews. And then they click call or directions or website, which are the 3 main actions people take from these. And a lot of times that's the purchasing decision. So one of the more important things I want to leave you with today as we're talking through this is it's completely free to get started and to add your listing. And there's really no money specifically to be spent directly with Google on anything for this. It's completely free. It takes time, it takes a little effort, but it's just filling out the boxes and adding some great imagery and setting up the listing. And they've tried to make it as simple as possible. We'll look at a few more pictures here from these. One of the other great things that you can do that I highly recommend, we usually talk about this more in a secondary class when we get more into what we call optimizing your Google listing, but you can add things like services. And if I had to guess, I'd say probably one of the reasons that this particular business showed up, it's going to help that their name has the word Medicare in it, of course, but having things in here and showing people what services you do also shows Google what services you do. It's an extra step to add in these services, but it's just another box to fill in on your Google listing. We'll jump back now and take a quick look at just the Google My Business documentation on Google itself. Once again, that's google.com/business. In here, the page when you start out has an overview. It has some great examples and kind of goes through some of the steps. Basically, it tells you, I think they've actually recently changed some of the naming convention. You still see Google My Business here, but lately they've been calling it a business profile instead of the Google My Business listing, which may be a slight change they're doing. But basically, they go through some of the unique things you can do, like add photos and show different things to your customers there. They also give you a way to kind of talk about all the different things, and they have some great little animated screenshots on the phone here that show you some of the other things you can even do with it. It goes as far as you can activate things like setting up messaging on it to where if someone wants, they can click the message button and send you a message instead of giving you a phone call. They have some great numbers here as far as different kind of searches that are going on and how many industries are receiving those searches and things like that. And once again, some more information as far as some of the different things that people do with them. They can call to click. You can even add in bookings for some types of businesses and things like that. One of the other great things about the Google My Business listing is that in the dashboard, once you've set it up, you can even see exactly how many times people are finding your listing. Google even goes as far as to tell you what words people typed in that brought them to your listing. So when I typed in Medicare agents near me and I clicked on one of these, in their dashboard, they'll see that someone typed in the word Medicare agent near me and they clicked on your listing. It'll total those up for you. So you can even start to get kind of a picture of what words are currently pointing people to your listings. The second one here is a little bit more just in depth about the profile itself. In here, it goes through kind of some of those same things as far as the different aspects of it. The main points you want to kind of see in a Google listing, or the parts that make people kind of choose one over another, is the reviews and the images. Those are the two things we see people interact the most with. So there are some of the more important things to make sure you're adding to your Google listing. But then they also go into some of the things like how you can post to keep people up to date. In today's times, with where we are right now and why we're doing this as a webinar instead of a in-person presentation, Google currently has quite a few things set up. It's probably glaring here at the top of the screen. They've even set up quite a few things right now on COVID-19. It's a great way, and probably the most way that more businesses are being seen online for their hours and things like that. There's a lot of extra features they've added over the past few weeks to make sure that restaurants and brick and mortar businesses and things like that have the ability to show if their hours are different right now, or if restaurants before were just having sit down, eat in, if they have switched their business to still be able to stay in business and do takeout or delivery. They've got special options in there right now to allow for that as well. So they've been really active to make sure that all that information is being taken care of. So there's a lot of great resources here. I highly recommend kind of going through some of them. But to kind of take this as hyper local to you as I possibly can, I'm pretty sure the use case that I've seen the most that would benefit you the most, and for you to understand at least the beginning steps to setting up the listing, or to kind of show you why I think it's so important, is that not only will these listings show up when someone searches for the things that you do, as long as you fill them into your Google listing, like your services and things like that, it's also very important to have one for what Google calls direct search. And what that means is, if you type in something into Google that is so unique that Google knows that name or those words pretty much lead to only one Google listing, then that can make sure that your listing shows up and only your listing. And I know that in your industry, there's so many different opportunities to take, and probably so many different marketing things that are thrown at you every day that can sound like a good idea and then can turn into a lot of work, or some really work, some really don't. You're always just kind of wondering what's the best thing you can be doing. And once again, in these presentations, usually we do a quick exercise right here where I just list off a whole lot of different things, like what's really the best client you can get, or what leads to the most sales of your service. And we start out by saying buying a billboard with your name on it, or getting a radio ad, or doing different things. And you guys are all hopefully raising your hands now if you think that's the best one. But as we kind of narrow down the list, we always get down to the end where we talk about usually the most successful people in businesses such as real estate or insurance or direct services, where a lot of times, yes, you're selling your company and your service, but at the end of the day, you're probably selling yourself and your name. And people knowing the financial group or the insurance group that you work for is good, but if they search that on Google and they find that company, well, you're probably on some type of a commission basis. And when you get a customer, it means a lot more to you than when the overall company does. So you really, at the end of the day, you're your brand. You want people to find you based on your name. And we usually learn that by finding out that if we look at your last 10 best clients, or the way that you got your last 10 clients, that really the number one thing that happens today is word of mouth and networking. It still works, and it's the number one most trusted way for service businesses to get more clients. And it used to be as simple as, hey, you're looking to buy a house? Well, my buddy Daryl sells houses and he's really good at it, and he would be happy to help you. I know him personally. He does a great job. And in the past, I would have pulled out this thing we used to call a phone book, and I would have looked him up in the phone book, and I would have found him, and I would have called him, or I hopefully would have gotten his business card from you, or something. But today, those word of mouth referrals and people telling you to call someone or to use them for your service still happens, but it doesn't lead to someone opening the phone book or always having a business card. Usually today, it gets you Googled. And the really nice thing about this program in particular is that if you set up a Google listing, you'll want to set it up with your financial company or your insurance company you work with, but you definitely want to include your name because that's the most important piece of it. That's what people are buying. That's the service they're looking for. So for instance, I just did a quick search here from an agent that I knew his name. I think I'd worked with him on something in the past. So let's just pretend that someone that I knew said, "Hey, Joe, who do you know that could help me out with some car insurance or health insurance?" I said, "Oh, I know this guy. His name's Jason Hodge. He's great at it. No, I don't have his business card. Yeah, I mean, hopefully you can find him on Google. I think he works for State Farm. I'm not even sure, but he did a great job for me. I'll try to dig his information up. Call me later." And in the meantime, if they type in Jason Hodge just into Google, just his name, on the right-hand side, we get what we call direct search. And what that means is that search was unique enough that Google decided this was the answer to that search. So he now has what I kind of call like a digital business card that not only works on a desktop computer, but is amazing on your mobile device as well, because the call button's right there and the directions button's right there. And you can call him, meet him. If you work out of your home or if you don't work out of a central office, you can set up a Google listing that still is found when people type in your name and even the services you provide. And it doesn't have to show a specific point on the map. It can be considered what we call a service listing, which shows just a general area of where you provide your services. But by Jason having this listing, he's now going to be able to receive that call, or that person's going to find him. Had he not set up a Google business listing, it may have brought up this link here at the top. It may not have. It may have brought up his Facebook profile. But what's so nice about that is having this is so common. It's something that I'm so used to using. And once again, especially on a mobile device, it would show up right here at the top. It would have his face right here, and it would say call or message or directions or his website. So that's something that we find simply creating the Google listing is so important, because there's so many things you can go out there and buy today to try to generate business with people finding you through specific keywords. But most of the time when it comes to an insurance agent or a real estate agent or people in the service industry, their name is their brand. So making sure that you have set up a Google listing with your name and what you do and provide is very important, because once that happens, not only will people find you with direct search, but they can find you for other things as well. Because if you do start to get a lot of people clicking on this and having a lot of good information in here, Google starts to see you as the answer to those questions. Like if someone writes a review and says, "Jason helped me out with my Medicare insurance. He did a great job. I really appreciate him." And then he writes them back. Well, that review is one of the highest markers Google uses for the words that it helps people find you for, because that Google feels that those reviews, because you have to have a Gmail account or some access to Google to be able to leave one, it can kind of screen and know that's a real person. And therefore the words in that review, Google knows you really can't fake those. Someone had to write them for you. And therefore those words become more important than things you put on your website, things you put in your services. And so it's kind of a unique way that Google tries to look at the real world instead of just the information that's all over the internet and the text that's out there. So in this case, he's gotten 15 reviews that are all good. It definitely helps. Those kind of things help quite a bit. The other big one is if you do create one of these listings, just make sure that you do keep an eye on it. We don't want the opposite to happen. I have ran the exercise a few times where I'll type in someone's name who may have created a listing, but then kind of neglected it. They went, I did that thing and I got it set up, and yeah, I completely forgot about it. Well, one person went in and wrote one bad review, and that's the only thing you see. And it's kind of strange, but even if I tell my neighbor, "Oh yeah, you got to use Daryl for your next house purchase," and he believes me and he trusts me and we've known each other for years, but then he goes online, he types in Daryl's name, and the first thing that shows up is no pictures of Daryl, maybe just the outside of his business, or maybe no pictures at all, just a circle on the map of where he does his area of service. It's got his name and his place that he works, but then there's just one bad review. He might decide that maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. And I told him to go to the wrong person, because it is strange today. But if you think about it, many people, and the studies show, that they trust what's on the internet sometimes more than real people's opinions, and reviews and stuff have become so important. So that's kind of my time, just to kind of really hopefully give you a quick overview of what Google My Business is, that it creates these cards, whether it's in a search or whether it's in what we call a direct search, how they are displayed on Google, and then of course, how to kind of get started in the program. I didn't want to take our full time here today and dive into all the intricacies of here's how to verify your listing, and here's how to make sure you have one, and here's the right ways to fill it in. There's a good amount of information on Google's site on how to do it. It's usually as simple as clicking Get Started, filling out your information properly. The only main question it's going to ask you is if you're a physical business location or if you are a service business. And if you're a service business, you do have to provide your home address. In doing so, though, it does not put your home address on Google. It's only for verification purposes. They don't want anybody out there just putting that they're an insurance agent or an electrician or a locksmith and then having their listing out there. They don't go too heavily into the verification in the case of insurance agents. Some industries, they do go a little further. In this case, usually all they do is they send a verification postcard to the address just to make sure you're a real person and to make sure that you're the one that registered for it. They don't want to make it too easy, because then anybody could put in your information and claim to be you and do things like that. So the process isn't too terribly difficult, but the good news is there are some people who've kind of stepped up. I'll finish here by saying I've known Mike, like he said, for a couple of years. It was really fun the first time I met him, because he seemed, I think after the very first presentation I gave that he was a part of in one of the groups here in Cincinnati, he like ran up to me afterwards and he's like, man, I really see the value in this. And I'm finally glad to hear that I know how to kind of set these up for someone. And he went and I guess went ahead and helped a couple people and learned a lot about the program, asked me a few questions here and there. And it was maybe just a month or two later, I was at another presentation and Mike was there again. And he had stories I'm sure he can share with you at some point about, oh my gosh, I was at I think he talked about he was at like his accountant's office and he was getting his personal taxes done or something. And he told her, he's like, hey, why don't you have this Google listing? I was just learning about this and you should have this. And the next time he saw her, she's like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you told me about that, because I've gotten tons of people calling me and just my information simply being available when someone types an accountant near me and things like that was so important. So I appreciate he saw the value in it and came to a few presentations. And he's even said that in this case, as you guys journey into taking a look at the program and how to get set up, if you do have some questions or anything, I've left his information up here on the screen. He'd be happy to help answer a few of those introductory questions and things. And we even talked about if enough of you are interested, we may host another session where we can click the next button, which I won't click today, but I'd be happy to go into the actual dashboard and start to really show you, once you've gotten your listing turned on, how to go in there and answer all the questions in a way to add all your hours, your phone number, even as far as showing how to display either events or services you provide, and really getting more into the details of how to optimize your Google listing. It's not hard, but there are some pretty simple things that we've learned over time that if you fill them out the right way from the beginning, that it can definitely help you out instead of kind of just guessing at some of the more intricate questions and things on there. That's my time here today. I'm here to answer questions though, and looks like we got a good team, everybody to help me parse through those. So go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's just a ton of great information. It's so funny because every time I've ever thought about Google, I didn't even, I always thought about, I've always heard the stories as far as how expensive it is. And I know that there are different segments of advertising on it, but at least to know that something like this is available, I had no idea that this was even available. So I appreciate you even going through this. We do have a lot of different questions here. So I appreciate your time going through this. So the first one says, I've had Google call me to update my info, but was charging me $500 to add my address. Is there anything that you that you might know to be able to address this?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is probably the number one question that we usually get when I'm giving this in a environment where there's people. Usually someone jumps in on this one before I even get halfway through the presentation.
Okay.
In most cases, if not every case in your industry, Google has never called you. Unfortunately, one of the number one scams and businesses out there are people calling. I get them every day still, and I try to mess with them personally because I know it's a scam, but the only ones that Google will call usually are electricians or people like that that have to provide a certification. In the case someone calls and says, we've noticed your Google listing has become unverified and we're going to verify it for you. It'll cost you X amount of dollars. Most of the time, they do absolutely nothing and they charge you, and that's about it. We do have marketing firms out there that will call companies that are good marketing firms that I've even trained, but they don't start with, we're Google, we're here to help you do this and that. They actually say their company name. If you receive any of those calls, my favorite way of addressing them is simply ask them their company name. Like if they say that they're with Google, that's illegal. They're not supposed to say that. And even if they're reputable or a business who may even be trying to help a bit, but that's their method of calling, if you ask them their business name, I've had so many people hang up on me or tell me they can't tell me their business name, which I find very strange when
Wow.
someone's asking me to pay them
Right.
for a service and won't even tell me their business name. So unfortunately, if you've had that happen, I'm terribly sorry. Google has tried everything to solve it. In America, it's nearly impossible. We have a lot of privacy laws that allow doctors, lawyers, anyone to spoof or use phone numbers that don't exist, and that's how they're able to do it. There was a case in the UK just last year where quite a few people in the UK went to jail, and I think they said in less than 2 years they had generated over $8 million from that particular scam alone. So it's profitable. There's a lot of people that, but yes, this is a completely free service. There is nothing to pay for until you get to the point where maybe a marketing firm wants to help you. And if you do see the value in it and it's generating a lot of value, you can add more value, just like Facebook and everything else, by giving it more and having someone really smart help you with it and work on it for you every day. I mean, you've got insurance policies to sell, not marketing to do every day. But in that case, it's a much different scenario than just a phone call and pay them.
Excellent. Excellent. The next question says, do you need a web page to set up a Google listing?
No. The great thing about the Google listing is that it can't exist without it. Having it can really help because it does connect itself to your web page and it looks at all the words and things that happen on your web page. We've had some businesses whose web page was pretty bad and didn't even show up on Google until you got to the 5th or 6th page. But they were a great business. And as soon as they create a Google listing and Google saw they were getting a lot of people clicking on their Google listing and interacting there, it will pull the web page with it. If you have a company who provides a landing page on their web page for you, you can use that. A lot of these, like the State Farm agents, they don't have a website except that they're on State Farm's website and they link to that page. You can even link it to a Facebook page and similar things as well. It's not mandatory, but it is a good idea.
Now, and this is actually my own question, does having pictures and videos and web pages enhance your chances of being higher up on as far as the Google listing is concerned with this?
Absolutely. I mean, Google looks at your listing two ways. First, it gives you a fair shake by just creating one. It'll start to put you in search right away. But it also starts listening. And if by chance someone types in Medicare insurance and you just got done creating your listing and you haven't added a single picture and have a single review, well, it's listening. So if you do happen to show up, there's not a very good chance I'm going to click on you if there's two other ones in this 3-pack next to you.
Right.
They'll look better. So eventually it'll learn that you're not the right answer because people never choose you. The other really important thing to know, and this is just kind of a quick rule of thumb, is when you do create a listing, I always say it's best to, at minimum, because people always want a number, so I'll just give you a quick, easy one to start with. You want 10 good images and 10 good reviews. That will help you quite a bit in giving you the chance to look better than your peers around you, and to give some people some great content to look at. And to take that one step further, Google's really truly trying not to look at the internet anymore. Their goal today is to no longer search the internet. Their goal is to search the real world. They take cues from things like your images. They don't allow you to add words to your images and things like they used to. Today, they run all your images through artificial intelligence, and they can see what's in that picture as good as you or I can, or maybe better, because they know more words than I know, and species of animals or plants. I mean, it's amazing when you run your stuff through Google's AI engine for imagery. And the same thing with reviews. The words in those reviews do matter. So when you ask someone for a review, it's best to ask them. One of my best tricks there, not tricks, but things that I like to do is ask a question. Don't just say, please leave me a review. Say, thanks so much for using our service. We'd love for you to share with others how easy it was to set up your Medicare plan. And if you ask it that way, people will usually take your cue in your question and write, it was so easy to set up my Medicare plan with name of insurance agent.
Right.
And those words matter so much to Google.
Good. Next question is, can the listing be both under the company and your name?
It's usually best to do it that way. If we look at the screen I'm on right now, without making you read everything I've read 1,000 times, the Google help documentation, support documentation, and policies is quite extensive. And in there, they do get into some of the nuances of how to best represent your business on Google. And they don't like you to do what they call keyword stuffing or put a bunch of stuff in. They want you to represent your business exactly as it is in the real world. And in the case of a service industry, it's a little harder because there's not a sign out front that has your business name on it. When there's a sign that they say, whatever's on the signs, what should be on your listing, nothing else. In this case, the one that says Nationwide Insurance, David B. Holiday, that is the exact structure that Google promotes on their documentation. State Farm, I believe, has done something pretty heavy. I've not spoke to them directly myself, though I have worked with some large insurance groups. They do theirs slightly differently, where they put the name ahead of the second part, and I think they've internally structured that way. But the Google documentation reads that if you're with, is it Messer Financial, then it would be Messer Financial : space, and then your name. And you can also put in the 3-letter codes or designations that usually cost a lot of money, like CPA or whatever the things insurance agents have in their certifications. But I see that a lot with doctors and other groups. It doesn't change anything, but I do see it in there. So the Nationwide one is the exact correct way to name your business.
Okay, excellent. John says, my site is suspended due to giving a UPS address. I removed, and where is the home address listed, please?
So if you do list a PO box or UPS address, Google does suspend the listing. It's one of the first things in the documentation that says kind of not to do. And of course, I mean, who reads that stuff? And I don't either. I mean, in this case, the one thing I have read the full documents on, but I get that every time. It does make sense that it stops people who are trying to make fake listings from happening. So if that's the case, there is a button you can click on the suspended listing, and you can go through a process to put in your home address and get re-verified and get that sorted out. It's not that big of a deal. And those are one of those cases where Mike can walk you through those steps very easily.
Okay. Can the Google listing be in the company website?
It exists as a separate entity being on Google, but you can link to the company website as your website if you would like. We usually find that most insurance agents want to link to something that talks about them, because if they go to all that trouble to get someone to find their listing, and then that person clicks the website button and then just calls and gets anybody, well, it didn't help them personally as much. But yes, you can link to the direct website. Usually we see, if you don't have your own, linking to a landing page that has your personal or contact information or something that leads them to you.
Okay, so we'll do a couple more here. Donna says, any suggestions for those who sell or serve multiple counties and states?
Absolutely. In this case, it is local. So you can tell Google that you do a lot of things other than where you are, but it really does stick at the beginning mostly closest to your home address. And I know that isn't maybe perfect, but it's just how it works. Now, they're learning and they learn quickly. So if you do have a listing and you want to at least show that it services other areas, you can put in the dashboard what other areas you service. And what I mean by it learning, and it doesn't make this public, but if someone leaves a review for you and they're from one state away, and then another person leaves a review for you and they're from a state away, and 10 more people click on pictures in your gallery that are another state away, Google starts to learn that maybe, just maybe, you serve that area. And that's how it starts to make these connections of truly who buys your service and who's interested in you. So it's a give and take, both back and forth, but you can put in the service areas you're in. But the best thing you can do, and it's harder to see, is to make sure that at the beginning, at least, that you do get your current customers or current clients to at least review you, because it sees where those reviews come from. I've been asked many times, like, it was a financial advisor. He's like, I just want people from Indian Hill, which is our most expensive area in Cincinnati, where people have millions and millions of dollars live. But he was in a small little part of Loveland, which is a little ways away from there, but not that far. He's like, how do I make sure that I only get clients from Indian Hill? And I'm like, well, have clients from Indian Hill, and then Google will see that that's who's using you. And so it's a little catch-22 there, but with just a little bit of work, you can get those reviews and teach Google where your clients come from.
Okay, yeah. So it sounds like it's not necessarily something that we would have to do. Google kind of catches it, I guess, with their algorithm.
It does. It's kind of, you can tell it a little bit, but it tries to get to the bottom of things, because of course all of us would just put exactly the places that we want it to bring people from. And if we're all doing that, then how does it pick?
Right. Okay. And we'll do the last one. And guys, I know that a lot of you have questions, and Joe has been so gracious to go through these, and I appreciate everybody's participation. But we're going to do one last question here. It says, do all reviews stay on the page, and do you have the liberty to pull scams or false reviews?
All reviews, well, reviews do go through a curation process that is an AI process. With the current issues we're in, they're actually delayed. Right now, a lot of reviews aren't being posted at all. They're slowly releasing that just because of the low manpower. But in most cases, most reviews, if not all, do land on your page. Once they do, you do have the ability to rebuttal them. So if it's someone that says, I don't like them, they're not nice, it's not something you can usually get removed by Google, because it doesn't violate their policy. There are reviews that, when left, if they have certain types of hate speech or personal information or things like that, they can be removed through a process of asking Google to remove them. They even have now a place where you can legally file disputes, because if they say something false, Google doesn't have a team of detectives sitting there waiting to spend time trying to figure out if what they said was false or real. So it is considered, I think it's libel, or I think it's libel when it's in writing, if not slander. I think it's libel. You can go that route as well, because they put it in writing and put it to the public. But in most cases, to be very honest, my most happy customers and clients and people that I've helped over the years just have a lot of reviews, because Google does sort them by relevance. And very quickly, once Google sees that you're a good business, most of the time, most of the negative reviews go straight to the bottom, and they're never seen. But if you only have 1 or 2 reviews and you get 1 bad one, well, of course, that feels real bad and it's sitting right there with the rest of them. So the more the better. Yes, you can sometimes get them removed, and you can always rebuttal them and write a response to every review, which everyone will see.
Good, good. Joe, thank you so much.
No
I
worries.
mean,
Happy to help.
truly, I appreciate all the information that you shared with us. And before I close out, is there anything that you want to say in closing?
No, I appreciate this. I know it kind of probably will sound weird, but I mean, I've kind of been here for about a month myself, like all of you, and not getting to present. And hopefully it was informative and that you got something out of it. I wish I could see your faces and see that it was helpful, but I do appreciate you letting me chat with you today. And hopefully every one of you learned something that can help. And feel free to reach out to Mike. And if it's too tough of a question, I'm sure he'll reach out to me. So it was
Excellent.
a pleasure today. And if you guys want to learn more, we do have one other presentation we give on digging a bit deeper, but we didn't want to really lead with that today. So if that's something, I'd be happy to jump back in and have another one of these with you at another point in time.
Excellent. Excellent. Once again, thanks so much, Joe. Once again, we want to thank everyone for taking time out of your day. Hopefully you learned something new that's going to help you grow your brand and your business. If you are not contracted with Messer and you have questions about partnering with Messer Financial, feel free to contact our marketing department at 866-568-9649, extension 7819. Or also you can reach out to Mike Brazel, mbrazel at messerfinancial.com. And be happy to answer any questions that you do have. This is the type of information that we want to make sure that we're sharing with all of our agents, because we want you to be able to build your own personal brand while you're building your business. But also take a moment to check out our events calendar at messerfinancial.com. We have webinar workshops scheduled throughout the year with valuable information just like this. But once again, thank you all so much for joining us. And be sure to take care of yourselves and everyone around you. Have a great day.